Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Francesca DiGiorgio with Hunger Solutions New York, and I'm joined today by my colleague Liz Lucas with No Kid Hungry New York. Hi, Liz. We are partners here to support your essential work strengthening child food security through the federal nutrition programs. And for today's panel discussion, we are also just so thrilled to welcome school nutrition leaders Lauren Kearley of Huntington Union Free School District and Kyle Mattler of Taconic Hill Central School District. And we'll be hearing more from them later. Thanks to everyone for participating in today's conversation about maximizing school breakfast participation now that universal meals are in place. With spring in full swing and planning for next year already underway, it is a great time to be thinking about ways to strengthen this essential program. And we've got a robust discussion planned with our panelists to share ideas for how to take the next step in your planning, wherever you are in the process, whether you have an established program or are looking to try something new. Next slide, please. A quick roadmap for today's webinar. We're going to start off by sharing some new data from the New York State Education Department on the impact of universal free school meals so far, along with some wins and opportunities we see for schools going into next year. We'll then hear from our panelists on different service approaches they're using to reach more students with free school breakfast. Our conversation is going to focus on key considerations for implementation and also strategies to get the school community on board. We also know compliance is top of mind for schools considering new breakfast service approaches, and so we're going to dedicate some time to that topic as well. We're going to start with a list of questions that we've compiled from working with schools over the years. And after that, we're going to open it up for live questions from the audience. To close, we'll wrap up with a quick poll and some next steps to consider. Today's webinar, just as a reminder, will be recorded and shared with all who registered. We're going to be running through resources pretty quickly just to focus more time on discussion today. So please consider this slide deck that you're going to receive as an archive to refer back to. Next slide, please. So last month was New York's first National School Breakfast Week, celebrating that all 2.7 million New York kids can now get free breakfast every school day with no questions asked. And this is just one example of how New York's inaugural year of universal meals has really brought renewed visibility to this program. And Governor Hochul herself actually joined the Breakfast Week celebration with a press event at Albany City School District, as shown on the slide here. And since the start of the school year, really, she's championed this initiative at multiple events across the state. And it's just really exciting to see New York leaders embracing universal meals. And with this visibility, we can also draw attention to how these programs effectively feed kids. Early data from the State Education Department show strong growth in participation for breakfast and lunch this school year. Next slide, please. Within the first months of implementation, schools had already hit historic milestones. In October 2025, schools served 18.2 million breakfasts, up almost 9% from the previous year, and 34.5 million lunches, up 5% from the previous year. We've also been hearing anecdotally that even long-standing schools offering free meals to all students are finding more participation in the program this year. So from our perspective, this demonstrates need in our communities, more people looking to school meals as a resource to help feed their families during difficult economic times. And these early data also signal, just back one slide, please. Perfect. And these early data also signal a renewed opportunity to prioritize school breakfast, which remains an underutilized program. And as we can see on this figure here, New York schools served about half as many school breakfasts compared to school lunches in October of 2025. Next slide, please. So with universal free school meals in place, schools have more stability to innovate and test new approaches to feeding kids. This program eliminates the barrier of cost for students to eat breakfast and administratively clears the runway for schools by providing capacity to focus on how kids get meals rather than tracking and claiming by meal category. And this means that schools have room to experiment on what this looks like is flexible. Maybe you're adding another point of service in the cafeteria, like a cart or another serving line, or it could be switching up where and when breakfast is served. Maybe thinking about breakfast in the classroom or second chance breakfast. This time of year, schools are preparing for state testing, for example. They want to make sure students are getting into their classrooms on time, have a good breakfast to fuel their performance. And we've actually seen schools use this as an opening to try breakfast in the classroom just for the day. Our focus today is planning ahead for next year, but if you're in a position where you're ready to launch, piloting a program towards the end of the year could be an opportunity to kind of test the waters and then recalibrate for the fall based on what you learned. So we're going to be hearing more about piloting from our panelists shortly, but first I'll hand it over to Liz to run through some resources that we've got to keep up the strong momentum for breakfast going into the fall.
Thanks, Francesca. Next slide, please. Keeping up the study drumbeat, let's talk about planning for back to school communications to remind families about free school breakfast. Social media is a powerful tool to help increase awareness for parents and caregivers, school leaders, and other members of the school community. Through these platforms, we're seeing more schools showcase their meal programs. From sharing photos of what's on the menu to posting about special events, social media can help generate excitement. To make this work a lighter lift, I'm excited to highlight a new resource we've developed for schools. Our new social media toolkit is designed to help promote free school breakfast to students and families during National School Breakfast Week and throughout the entire year. It includes new graphics developed jointly with the New York State Department of Education Child Nutrition Team and sample captions for social media that are available in both English and Spanish. We launched it during National School Breakfast Week, but the message can resonate year round, and we encourage you to use it year round. We'll be sharing this toolkit along with other resources we'll be mentioning throughout our time together in our follow-up email after this webinar. And at this point, I'm thrilled to kick off our conversation with Lauren and Kyle about ways that they've expanded their school breakfast programs. Next slide, please. So before diving in, I'd like to reintroduce our panelists. Lauren Kearley is a school nutrition professional with over 18 years of experience, currently serving the Huntington Union Free School District in Suffolk County, Long Island. Huntington Union Free School District serves approximately 4,000 students across 8 schools, 4 primary, 2 intermediate, 1 middle, and 1 high school, and has participated in the Community Eligibility Provision, or CEP, since 2023. The district's average daily participation is approximately 33% for breakfast and 54% for lunch. Prior to joining Huntington, Lauren worked with the New York City Department of Education's Office of Food and Nutrition Services from 2007 to 2023, supporting large-scale school meal programs and nutrition initiatives. Kyle Mattler serves as the Food Service Director for Taconic Hills Central School District in Columbia County, New York. He joined the district in 2023 and oversees a program that serves approximately 1,000 students from pre-K to 12th grade across 1 elementary school and a combined junior and senior high school. Taconic Hills CSD spans 10 towns and 1 village, covering nearly 250 square miles, and has participated in the community eligibility provision since 2019. The district maintains an average daily participation rate of approximately 35% for breakfast and 61% for lunch. Before joining Taconic Hills, Kyle worked with Compass Group as a food service director in the senior living division, bringing valuable experience in food service operations and nutrition to his current role. And Francesca, I'll hand it back to you to start our conversation off.
Thanks so much, Liz, and thank you so much to Lauren and Kyle for joining us today to share about your program. I would love to just start out with the basics. I'd love to start by asking each panelist to walk us through what alternative breakfast service looks like in your district. That's really going to be the focus today, is the models that you're using besides the traditional cafeteria line. And Kyle, I'm wondering if we can start with you. Can you kick us off by sharing some background about your Breakfast in the Classroom program?
Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, so when I joined the district, we were already breakfast in the classroom, which helped a lot. At the beginning of this year, we decided to pilot a delivery style method. So instead of the students coming down to our cafeteria and grabbing a meal and then going to their classrooms, we were going to bring the meal to the classroom. We decided to pilot with our fifth grade, and we saw an increase of almost 110%. We went from about 22 kids in each classroom in the fifth grade, grabbing a breakfast up to about 44 to 48. So it was a pretty big increase for us, and we're looking to go district wide next year.
That's great. Thank you so much for that overview, Kyle. And Lauren, passing it over to you now. Can you talk to us about how you're offering grab and go breakfast in your district?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me. Super excited to be here. So we're doing what I've coined like a hybrid method, which means that I still do a traditional cafeteria service on the hotline for a certain period of time, and then we transition to a grab and go style cart service. We have multiple locations depending on the building, and that allows us to really make it customizable for each building and for each principal to make sure that we're getting those meals out to those students that need wherever we can get it to them.
Awesome. I really appreciate that overview, Lauren. And I think the key word that stuck out to me from what you shared there was customization, and hybrid as well. Just this idea, I think when we're talking about this term breakfast after the bell, or, which is really describing, breakfast that's served after the traditional start of the school day. And we think about like the different models, like second chance, breakfast in the classroom, grab and go. I think I know that when I was learning about these models, I got caught up in kind of that rigid definition. And I think it's actually so much more nuanced than that. And I think that that's really exciting to know that you can really make these models what works for your district and customize them and hybridize them. And so I'm really excited to hear more about how both of our panelists are really making these models their own. And that's really a takeaway that I want to just kick us off with, is that there's really no one size fits all. Awesome. So let's get into it a little bit more. Let's talk about decision making for choosing your models next. We know that, of course, as school nutrition department, we're all in it to feed the kids, but there are other logistics that shape what's feasible to operate, like building layout, scheduling, staffing, etc. So I really want to talk about what led your team to choose the specific alternative breakfast service approach and considerations that rose to the top. Kyle, why breakfast in the classroom at Taconic Hills? Oh, you're still on mute, Kyle.
Thanks for that. Uh,
Perfect.
like I mentioned, when I joined the district, we had already been participating in breakfast in the classroom. But what we saw, especially with our fifth and sixth grade students in the elementary building, was that their teachers were telling them that they needed to get to class, no excuses, class starts. And we noticed lower participation in those grades. So we wanted to try and figure out a way how to target those students without them being late to class. So we ultimately landed on delivering the food to the classroom. And like I mentioned, it jumped our numbers up. We did hit some roadblocks. We were able to overcome those with support from our administration.
All right, Kyle, I can't tell if your screen froze. All right, we're gonna give Kyle a minute to come back online, and then have some more follow-up questions for Kyle. So in the meantime, maybe we'll we'll pop over to Lauren um, while Kyle is recalibrating here. Or oh, Kyle, are you back? I see you
You able to hear me?
potentially. Yeah, we hear you now. We
Sorry about that.
no worries at all. Lauren was ready to jump in, and I think we'll wait for a minute and finish up your response. I think we'd left off around you were talking about concerns around student tardiness really being a motivator and getting support from your administration on the delivery model. If there's anything else you wanted to wrap up there around why.
No, that was pretty much it. We just wanted to make sure that we were getting the most amount of meals out to the most amount of students, and
Hmm.
the best solution that we could come up with was delivering meals to the classroom.
Hmm. I think another detail that I'd point out that I've heard from what you've shared is just being a rural district with long bus rides and how that also influenced your decision to transition to a delivery model. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that impacted your offerings?
Absolutely, yeah. So we cover just under 250 square miles, and there are some very long bus rides for a lot of our students. So they're up early, they're on the bus, they get to school, they're already cranky because they've been on the bus for an hour or so. So we really want to make sure that they're starting their day right with breakfast.
I really appreciate how you're framing that as a solution to address concerns around tardiness, which really resonate, I think, with administrators and teachers, folks even beyond the school nutrition department, which is such an important part of the process when bringing different stakeholders into the fold. So I really appreciate that background. Um, Lauren, I'd love to pivot to you now and talk a little bit more about why grab and go at Huntington.
Sure. So when I first started in the district in 2023, it was like a really beautiful synchrony of myself starting fresh, my boss, the assistant superintendent of finance, starting at the same time, and also the head of buildings and grounds. So we've been in this really awesome vibe of the three of us of like, well, do we want to keep doing it this way? What do we want to change? Just because they've always done it, do we have to keep doing it? And so it's really been very altering to all of our programs and all of our departments to be able to work in this way. And I think it just is so beautiful. But anyway, so a question came down of like, could we do this? They had done a lot of classroom delivery during COVID, and some of the teachers wanted it back. Some were absolutely against it. And, my boss was kind of just like, do you know anything about this program? And I'm like, yeah, I've totally done this 1,000 different ways from Sunday from my time in the city. I'm like, are you giving me carte blanche to run it how I want to run it? Or is there a vision you have in mind? And she was like, no, they want it, you do it. And that's what we did. So I mentioned customization before because that's how I make it successful, right? I'm usually a big proponent of standardizing, and later we can talk about some of my
Mhm.
SOPs, but for this intent and purpose, it really is not like a one size fits all, especially when you get that pushback. So being able to customize it and being able to include people in the decision making process where you can definitely helps. And it makes people feel included. There's going to be pushback. You just have to be ready with an answer. I always tell them, you might not like my answer, but I promise you I have one. So we started with the cart service. I found that my traditional hot cafeteria service was really, low participation. It was mainly kids that were getting there very early. It was a daycare service, essentially. Parents were dropping off on their way to work, and the school aide babysits until school actually starts. And then in my bigger schools, which is where the majority of my population are, which is my middle and high school, those kids are cranky teenagers and they're rolling through the door if we're lucky on time, many times after the bell. So they don't have time to go to the cafeteria because that service is already over. So we wanted to find a way to reach as many students as possible. And so we started literally with like a Frito-Lay cart. And I was like, I can do this. And we're going to pilot it. We're going to put it out there. We're going to see what happens. And again, tons of pushback, whether it was from custodians, whether it was from the union, whether it was from different principals, depending on the building. Definitely the teachers worried about the classroom, worried about mess, worried about pests. But literally, once the program was running for like 2 weeks, they realized it really had very little effect on them whatsoever. And more kids were eating and it was going successfully. And over time, we've grown. I ended up applying for a No Kid Hungry Share Our Strength grant. And I was awarded some funds and I was able to purchase like nicer, bigger, more heavy duty carts. I also have sought funds from Fuel Up for Kids. So they donated two carts. So one by one in each building, I started this program. And by the end of the summer, I had all my carts in place and we started fresh on day one this September. And it's just been a whirlwind and they're loving it. In my high school, I started out with like early breakfast service from 7:05 to 7:30. And then we were finding kids, coming back for like that second chance breakfast, which we also still do. But I spoke to the principal and we decided to just leave that cart out early. So all of the kids that are coming in late or once they've been in school for like an hour or so and they're transitioning, that cart stays out till 9:30 and they can go and get that breakfast whenever they see fit. I mean, I know me personally, I need to have my coffee before I have a whole meal, so I totally get that sentiment.
Oh,
And then
yeah.
the other thing that we do is that the carts are generally packed at all times, except for the refrigerated items. And even then, like, I think I shared a photo, which maybe we'll see on a different slide later. There's like, I have colored bins where I keep my breakfast items. And in the bottom, I have my milk. So those things can just easily slip off the cart and slip into a refrigerator. But the carts are always packed. So, like, if a kid comes at any time from the end of my breakfast service till my first lunch period starts, we still allow the second chance breakfast. So it's multifunctional.
Wow, so many good things going on there. I think, one of the unifying pieces that I heard across each of your descriptions for this section was the power of piloting as a strategy to kind of ease the rest of the school community in, especially those that you're getting some pushback from, and that, and then show them how it works. And then use that momentum and the real, data showing higher participation, especially in some of those harder to reach groups, like older kids, to encourage, expansion. So I really appreciated that. And I think that that's a concrete takeaway that some of our audience members might take. And just, yeah, that all sounds great. I think, wanting to transition along now to our next topic. Accountability and compliance are both top of mind for schools considering implementing a new service model for breakfast. And both Lauren and Kyle have put strategies and procedures in place to help set staff up for success and support continuity of service. So we're going to get into it. Um, Kyle, I'm wondering if you can share your perspective on what building accountability for your breakfast in the classroom program looked like for other schools interested in this approach.
Yeah, so when we set out to start this program, I reached out to my state ed representative and got some more information on what we would have to do in order to implement this correctly. We were actually in our administrative review year, my first one. So I really wanted to make sure that everything was as clean as it could be before we started this pilot program. We send up paper rosters with each bin. And as the teacher is taking attendance, they check off the name of the student getting a meal. Because they're doing this, this also now makes them have to have certain amount of hours in food service training. So we're working with our superintendent to get that built into our superintendent days for next year. So with the papers, when they come back down, that is how we then track what meals have gone out and come back from the kitchen.
Thank you so much for that overview, Kyle. I really appreciated hearing your strategy for how to set teachers up for success as essentially joining the food service program operations. And I hadn't heard that strategy before of using kind of this existing training time and breaking it up into digestible bites, food pun intended, so that everyone has the information they need to ensure strong accountability. So that was a really powerful takeaway, and I appreciate that. Lauren, over to you. Um, I'd love to start by something really unique that I heard you talk about in a previous webinar. It's about your standard operating procedure that you've created for grab and go carts and how this has really helped your staff get on the same page across your 8 buildings. I'm wondering if we could start there.
Sure. Um, so I have my 8 buildings, but I also have a handful of subs. As I'm sure we all know, there's lots of absences that happen and people that could be out long term or call outs in the morning. So I like to take the guesswork out of it and provide people with as much information as possible so that whether it's Bobby or Susie or whoever shows up on that day, they know what they have to do. And by having these SOPs, it takes a little bit of the onus off of the cook or the manager who is also busy that day as well and may not have the time to sit there and really go through every little procedure. So we have work schedules, we have job descriptions, and we have SOPs. But so my kitchen grab and go cart SOP is basically like, the carts are always set up the night before. So in the morning, all they have to do is grab the refrigerated items, wheel out the cart. Then they stay there with the cart. They're clicking, greeting students, making sure they take a reimbursable meal. When the service is over, they bring it back. They tally up the clicker counts. They deduct whatever's left over for the food production records. And then they begin refilling everything. Those clicker counts get recorded on the tally sheet. They are transferred to the food production sheet, and then they are also bulk entered into our register or POS.
Thank you so much for walking us through your process, Lauren. And I just really what stood out to me from what you said is this concept of planning ahead to take the guesswork away and just having these uniform systems across your building to not only save time and capacity when there are staff callouts, but also I imagine it supports record keeping, especially for preparing for those administrative reviews. So really, really good stuff. And I also, what I was hearing is, that you're able to take advantage of being a CEP, a community eligibility provision district, the simplified counting and claiming process there, and how being a CEP school allows you to use that clicker at the cart and entering those counts into the system once service is over. So that's all really good stuff. I think just keeping an eye on time, we're going to move along to our next topic. So, around building excitement and building champions within your district. So schools with strong programs will often reference a certain individual, a staff person that's really helped build excitement around students for breakfast or buy-in among other members of staff for school breakfast. And for some districts, this is a principal or business official. It could be a teacher or another food service staff member, but any of these stakeholders can be an ally for breakfast. I know that they can also be pushback. So I think that there's really an opportunity for education there. And so for this section, I'd like to hone in on who these champions are in your district. I know you've already sort of started to mention some of those folks, but just to hone in on that and ways that you've helped build those relationships. And Lauren, I'd like to start with you here. I really appreciated what you said a little bit earlier on in the discussion about bringing school leaders into the decision-making process for certain logistics around your program, like cart location, for example. And I'm wondering if you can just give a little bit more context about this strategy and what's worked for you.
Yeah, so like I said, I rolled out each building separately, and what I would do is I would figure out my logistics, what I needed to do, make sure I had everything in place, and then I would go and have a meeting with the principal. A lot of times, depending on the school districts, their principals may be empowered and they may be running their own little district within their building and not realizing that they're part of a cohort. Um, but so, making them feel like maybe it's their choice. I mean, I always try to steer the conversation because I've already walked the building, mapped out where I want the cart to be. But, something as
Mm.
simple as if I want the cart in the lobby and they want it in front of the gym and they had it, there's a good reason for it, like then I'm going to put the cart in front of the gym. because then it makes them feel included and it makes them feel like they've had a say in the decision making process. But like I said before about customizing, some of my carts are in the main lobby. Sometimes the cart is right outside the cafeteria door. Sometimes the cart is in the gym because that's where they line up in the morning. At the high school, we've had a lot of success. I told you that we extended the hours that were open, but we're actually now piloting a new program where we're putting out a second cart in secondary locations. So, just having those conversations and try to include people as much as possible. When they feel like it's their idea, they're much more inclined to make it successful. And then, even when you have the pushback, like I'm in a very lovely situation where the custodians here are absolutely outstanding. I can't speak highly enough about them, but I've had a long history where that's not been the case. So, I know that they can be a big opponent. And a lot of times the custodians are worried about spills, they're worried about garbage overflow, they're worried about pests in the classroom. Teachers might have the same issue, but I just always try to come to them with a solution. As soon as they have a pushback on something, I'm like, okay, solved it. What else? Why can't we do it? Tell me why. In some school districts, I've done where we do breakfast in the classroom. We send the meals inside the bag that the meals come in. We have our roster, and then we put a thing of gloves, a thing of paper towel, a sanitizing cloth, and a garbage bag. In some districts where the custodians really said like hands off, I said, fine, put the garbage back in the bag, and when the bag comes down, I'll take care of the garbage. We've had other districts where we put a garbage can on each floor, and then the student helper of the day or week goes out and takes the bag to the garbage, and then the custodian is only collecting one large garbage can instead of going through each and every classroom. So, going back to the customization, it's like when you're starting, like you have to do this one way, this blanket ruling, you can really piecework it to make it work wherever you need it to be.
That was so much helpful information, Lauren. I'm just like thinking here about what my takeaways were. So it sounds like, just kind of at the top of your remarks, coming prepared to those conversations with school leaders to give them a lay of the land of like what that specific building looks like and where you might think that a cart works best based on like student traffic or whatever it is. So like even though you're going to be asking for feedback, already kind of in the back of your mind having a suggestion and justification in place is going to make those conversations go in the direction that you want them to. I also heard adaptability, just like keeping those lines of communication open, such as with custodial staff and like being prepared with a solution. That was such an innovative waste management example that you shared, Lauren, of just kind of having everything put together, ready to go, and then bring back to the cafeteria. So, and I think that that really builds the relationship because it's showing that you're willing to, you know, tweak and customize, again, our favorite word here, to make it work for that particular situation. So, so much good stuff. I would love to kick it over to Kyle to get your perspective just on champions in your district. I believe you mentioned your school superintendent as one example of an important advocate, but just anything else that you'd like to share about fostering that relationship and continuing to do so in future.
Yeah, so when we started with this pilot program, I had approached the principal of the elementary and they were on board. We also went and spoke with the school business official and superintendent. The school business official and superintendent both started within about 3 months of each other and myself. So we're all fairly new to this district. The superintendent had experienced a system like this in a previous district. Once we rolled out the program, there was some pushback from the teachers union. Principal kind of turned around and gave us a little bit of pushback, but thankfully our school business official and our superintendent said, we're going to push forward with this. The results are speaking for themselves. And since then, we've really settled into the program. As far as buildings and grounds or maintenance goes, we have a garbage can that is out in the hallway for the students to empty their containers out in. We had one teacher who was just very sensitive to the smell of some of the breakfast items. So our solution was just to get it out of the classroom as quickly as we could. So our buildings and grounds department set out some cans for us.
Awesome. I really appreciate hearing how your district addressed the waste management component of this. It's really helpful to hear, again, no one size fits all. And again, just already having, to what you said a little bit earlier, already having at least one person, that one school leader who's bought in can kind of create like a domino effect to get the rest of the people on board. So really appreciate hearing that context. I think just to again keep the conversation moving, we're gonna talk a little bit more about impact. And I'd love to hear any success stories or data points about how your breakfast participation has changed since implementing your innovative alternative breakfast service models. And Lauren, I'm wondering if we can kick it to you if you'd like to talk about the impact that you're seeing. Anything that you haven't shared yet.
Sure. I just wanted to add one more thing on the last topic.
Sure.
One of the successful things that I felt like really worked for me is I sort of worked from the easiest to the hardest. So, I
Hmm.
found that principal that is willing to try everything. She's the school that everybody pilots things at. And then, went on so forth and so forth, and leaving the person for the last that was going to be the most ordinary and, the most argumentative. Because at that point, once I had 7 other schools that were already successfully implementing it, she really couldn't fight me on it because everyone else was already doing it. It was a district-wide initiative. And so it sort of just quieted down the noise. So I think you need to do your research and, find your friends and work from the easiest, the low-hanging fruit, and then go up to the harder, prickly ones.
I
Okay,
love
so
that.
now
Start with the low-hanging fruit. I really like that, Lauren. Thank you.
you're welcome. So yeah, I mean, our jump when we initially began the CEP program was completely outrageous. And what's nice to see is that we're in year 3 now. We've held on to that. We still see bits and bumps here and there. But at least it's steady, which is nice. And I mean, that's the beauty of all of these states that are becoming free for all and the CEP program, like allowing the meals to get into the hands of those that need it and taking away the stigmatism and just like making it so that it's a safe and inviting environment for everyone. Um, so my main focus this year is prepping for next year, and I still feel that my middle school is like the most lacking. So my goal is to redesign their serving line over the summer, and we're going to start
Mm.
fresh day one. It's going to be a new space and a new um it's going to provide a whole new attitude, I think. And then any kids that have had this stigma of, oh, well, I don't like the cafeteria food or the mean old lady or this, that, the other thing. It's going to be a new place. It's going to be a fun and inviting cafe. And I'm hoping to capture them from day one. And then in my high school, I mentioned that I am starting the second cart service. The other thing that we're doing is we're going to be piloting hot meals because traditionally I've only been doing cold meals on my cart. So I'm going to be adding in some breakfast sandwiches and some individual like mini waffles, mini pancakes, French toast, cinnamon rolls, things like that, to see if I can get those numbers up a little further.
Sounds like you're going to have a busy next couple of months in summer. But so many great strategies that you have in place, kind of looking at your data, looking at your participation to see, okay, like, growth mindset, where else, what population are we, can we reach more? And it sounds like that's your middle school and you're going to be rejuvenating the space, giving them something fresh to look at and be in. And then I love your idea of the hot meals. I know that that's often a participation booster. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about how that pilot program is going to go. And I think I remember you speaking, Lauren, about the impact on your older kids for grab and go carts. I don't know if you can speak to how making meals available, grab and go style, impacted participation among that often harder to reach group. Are you seeing a change in participation since rolling out that program?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, my middle school counts have traditionally been the lowest.
Hmm.
But where we did see a jump, which was happy, they went from serving
Hmm.
25 breakfasts to some days we might get 50 or 75, depending on the item. So that's huge for them, even though it's such a silly number in the grand scheme of how many children are actually in that building. But the high school they've been jamming. I mean, there's days that they're over 200 for breakfast. And like I said, we're just always thinking of ways that we can feed more kids. Another thing that we're doing, which I don't even think I mentioned in our prep call, but we have a Wilson Tech program and they come
Yeah.
and go two different sections. So the first section, which is one of the reasons that we leave the card out till 9:30, that card is there and those kids coming in from other districts for Wilson Tech are able to grab a meal. And then in
Mhm.
the afternoon, I do something very similar with a grab and go lunch cart, which the secondary shift gets lunch on their way out back to the buses. So you just really have to I like to have like a sit down with my principals in the beginning of the school year and just say like, okay, what's new this year? Are there any, communities that we're not reaching? Have you received any requests for anything? One thing that came out of last year's conversation was like the snack program, and we started that and we got it up and running. And then we realized, you know what? They really don't need snack. These kids are working during the day and they're coming in for an evening program. They need supper. They need a more substantial meal. And just having those conversations, like you said, finding your champion, finding who wants to help, who has the information, who knows the kids, and just doing everything in your power to provide any type of essential service to these kids. Like so many kids rely on these meals for breakfast, lunch, snack, supper around the clock, 5 days a week. And, they really suffer on the weekends when they're not at school. So just keeping that in mind and trying to be as open and as accommodating as possible is really where you can have the most success and have the most impact. But it all starts with breakfast. And like I've seen where the nurses are happier because kids are not coming down. I have a headache, my stomach hurts. Teachers that, initially are so easy to complain, they're worried about the classroom, they're worried about instructional time. Now they're happy because the kids are able to focus. They come to class on time. They're not trying to leave to get the pass for the nurse. Their behaviors are better. Their test scores are better. They're more inclined to pay attention and participate. So, it really does come full circle. Once you get things going, the success really speaks for itself.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that impact, Lauren. I mean, I just want to like bottle that up and share it with everybody. That was really inspiring. And I just like the mindset of, okay, meals are available free for all. What's next? What more can I do to build up breakfast? Even like looking to other programs like after school meals. It's just really exciting to hear and exactly what I think is going to maximize, reaching the most kids with those essential meals that they need. So really appreciate hearing what you have cooking for next year, Lauren, and just the impact that you saw. I think Kyle, just to wrap us up, I know you already spoke about the over 100% increase in your breakfast participation from the delivery model that you've implemented for breakfast in the classroom. But if there's anything else you want to say on impact or share about what you're working on for next year.
Yeah, I mean, as far as impact goes, really to mirror what Lauren said, we've seen, negative behaviors decrease. They're starting to pay attention more in class. They're showing up more on time, ready to go. Even when we had teachers coming back and trying to say this isn't going to work, we don't want to do this, they have slowly, but they have eventually realized the positive of getting these kids fed in the morning. As far as next year goes, we want to move this program to the entirety of the elementary and deliver to each classroom. So right now we're just in the process of getting all the logistics figured out, how we're going to be delivering hot meals or cold meals, making sure that the students have choice when it comes to their breakfast, and looking at Lauren's program. How can we effectively get anyone who missed a breakfast if they're coming into school late? So there's always another step to take, but the most important thing is just to take that first step.
Thank you so much, Kyle. I'm really excited to hear more about how your expansion goes next year and definitely want to stay in touch to hear because I'm sure it's going to be successful. I think this is going to wrap up the prepared list of questions that we have today. I just want to share a couple of my very top view takeaways here. Um, what I'm taking away is that building out your programs has been an incremental process. There's always more to do. And where certain strategies like piloting have helped pave the way to expansion. What I also heard front and center is bringing other school stakeholders on board through integrating them into decision making, whether it's for placement of breakfast carts or using professional development days to ensure teachers have what they need to support strong breakfast in the classroom implementation. Next, I'd love to open the floor for any questions from the audience. We have about 5-ish minutes to hear those questions before we wrap things up. So please feel free to enter questions or comments in chat or unmute yourself. And I see one question from Kristen in chat, and I'd love to put this, I think, over to Lauren. Lauren, if you are serving breakfast at carts around the school, do you have a remote POS system there as well? Um, Maybe we'll start with that part of the question. There's a couple of like follow-up questions, but maybe we'll start with that, Lauren. And I'm happy to repeat the question if helpful.
No, I heard you.
Yep.
So the answer is kind of twofold. At the moment, we do not. We're using a clicker method. However, I do have the ability to run Mosaic, which is my accountability software, on any laptop. And I've also looked into, because these carts have become so successful and the idea of moving them around and, repurposing them for different things. I've been looking into these like mobile wireless tablets that also will run Mosaic.
Awesome. I feel like that also addresses kind of the second part of the question. How are you keeping track of students that get a breakfast? And then I'm not sure if you addressed this already, Lauren, but just to clarify, how are you keeping the refrigerated items like milk cold at these carts?
So I'm just going to go back to that question because I think what she means is how am I preventing a student from double dipping?
Mm,
So the reality is in the smaller schools, it's much easier because the traditional hot service runs up until a certain point. And at that point,
mm,
the a lot of my smaller kitchens are two-person kitchens. So the one person that's on the register goes and works the cart. So she's already come face to face with every kid that took a breakfast. And it's actually magnificent. And it amazes me every time I visit them. Like they know these kids literally by name. And they're like, no, Bobby, you already had the pancakes, so it's cute. In the older schools, it's really a timing thing. There is a little opportunity in the high school just now that we have the second cart and we are using the clicker system, but that's why I've been researching these tablets because I think that going forward from day one next year, specifically for the high school, because I have so many things going on and because it's become such an extended service, I'm going to use the mobile tablets or the laptops. And then, I'm sorry, now I forgot the third part of the conversation.
No worries at all. I'm happy to repeat it, and I appreciate you catching that on that second question about double dipping. I appreciate the clarification. So the last part of the question is, how are you keeping the refrigerated items like milk cold at these carts?
So I have these like styrofoam Cambro boxes. And like I said, they stay in the refrigerator overnight. They're already loaded. And then I also use reusable ice packs just to give it an extra little helping of temperature control. But essentially, DOH you can do the time control method, and that gives you 4 hours. I mean, none of my carts are in service for more than 4 hours, and we're, taking them immediately from the refrigerator, serving what we're serving, and then they go back in the refrigerator. But you do have that method depending on your needs in your building.
Awesome. Thank you so much to Kristen for the question and to Lauren for that really robust set of responses. I'd say we'll give it another minute to see if another question comes through, and then we're gonna skip to our final couple of slides.
While we're waiting for any other questions, something I'd like to add. The
Yeah,
cart in the
please.
photo on the left with the multicolored bins, my district was actually awarded something very similar from the American Dairy Association Northeast. There are grants available for a lot of equipment. So I'd recommend that anyone who's looking to do a program like this, go ahead and try and find some of these grant opportunities. Um, the one that I can recommend the most is the American Dairy Association Northeast.
That's great. Thank you so much, Kyle. And I know No Kid Hungry also offers grant opportunities. And it's just really great to know that, there are resources available to help fill those gaps. So again, thank you so much for pointing that out, Kyle. All right, I'm not seeing any further questions come through chat. I will just say out loud that if you think of anything else after the fact, our panelists have graciously offered their contact information. It's on the slide here. We're going to include it in the follow-up email that's going to get sent to all registrants along with the recording. So you'll be able to reach out either to the panelists or to myself or Liz at your convenience with any further questions. But I think at this point, I'm going to turn it back over to Liz to bring us home. And also just reiterate a huge thanks to Lauren and Kyle for your time and your expertise and just for sharing so many different ideas for people considering alternative breakfast service at whatever stage they're at. I think that there's takeaways. So thank you, thank you, thank you for what you do.
Thank you, Francesca, and thank you, Kyle and Lauren. That was incredible. I learned so much. Every time I talk to each one of you, I learn a little bit more, and it just gets my wheels really turning for what I can share with other colleagues in the state and even across the country through our No Kid Hungry network. So we have a few more resources that we'd like to share before we wrap up today. A few more strategies you may want to consider no matter where you are in your program. And next slide, please. We'll start with building buy-in with students. Elevating student voice is a practical low-cost strategy to strengthen your school breakfast program. Recent research by No Kid Hungry found that 87% of teens would be more likely to participate in school meals if they knew their school actively gathered student feedback. This highlights a great opportunity. Participation increases when students feel heard. So, teens, that hard to reach middle school, high school population, often prefer anonymous surveys or suggestion boxes, but listening sessions and small focus groups can be really effective too. Think about some of those student groups that maybe are already operating in your middle school and high school. See if they want to do a listening session or offer some feedback with you. These methods are simple and scalable: a brief survey, a QR code in the cafeteria, or again, engagement through student leadership groups. Francesca is going to drop a toolkit in the chat, but we do have a No Kid Hungry student feedback toolkit that is really helpful, especially in engaging high school students. Bottom line, when students see their input reflected in program improvements, trust goes. And when trust grows, participation often follows. Next slide, please. Just want to revisit that topic of building buy-in with school leaders and reiterate that it can happen at any point in your program development. Sometimes we think about buy-in just at the point when we're about to launch or implement breakfast after the bell, but you can build buy-in at any point in your program development. Maybe you're a new school nutrition director and you're thinking about new things to bring in the program, like Lauren was when she joined Huntington. Or maybe the timing isn't right to completely switch up how your program is serving breakfast. So start with a pilot, like Kyle did in his fifth grade and delivering to the fifth grade classrooms. The starting point for building buy-in can even be as simple as just giving regular updates about your program, not launching anything, not piloting anything, but taking the time to reach out to your principals, your business administrators, your superintendent, other school stakeholders, and sharing updates about your program. Conversations with these leaders can focus on what's working well as also identify gaps where kids may be missing school breakfast. Lauren mentioned earlier at the start of the year, she sits down with everybody and asks what's new. It's a great opportunity to make sure that you're reaching kids at the points of where they're coming into the school and when they're leaving the school. School leaders do manage a lot of competing priorities and challenges, but you can present your breakfast program as a solution. When you come prepared to discussions, you highlight your program, and you anticipate challenges, it can often help to build buy-in from school leaders. Help them understand the role your program plays to support students and how strengthening school breakfast aligns with broader goals around attendance, learning, and behavior. And I think Kyle and Lauren spoke to those benefits wonderfully after they saw their program being implemented and they saw the results in the classroom and throughout the school building. Our team has resources to help you carry this message. We can also provide individual support to help you kick off these conversations with leaders. And again, as we heard from Kyle and Lauren, strong school breakfast programs rely on engaging a lot of stakeholders across this school community. And keeping the lines of communication open and transparent will lay the groundwork to get school leaders and other staff on board to help. And next up, we have a few more action steps before we begin to close. So next slide, please. I know it's spring, the school year is winding down, so now is the time to lay the groundwork for school breakfast in the upcoming school year. You've heard some great strategies from Lauren and Kyle today that may not be on your district's radar yet, but now you can think about these strategies and see if you can adapt and modify them to fit your school district. That's one of my favorite portions and favorite aspects of breakfast. There's so much you can adapt to modify to fit each of your unique school buildings. Making breakfast a part of the school day is a proven strategy to boost participation. Are there ways you can add cards or do a second chance breakfast or deliver to the classroom to make it easier for kids to access that morning meal? We've talked about the power of piloting and small incremental steps. This again can help to pave the way for a smooth transition. Even if you aren't in a position to start or expand school breakfast programming in your district, there are other ways to get involved. Use our social media toolkit. Remind folks that breakfast is free in New York State to all students. And use those resources to elevate the school breakfast program and boost participation. Whatever step you're on, our teams can help you get started. And we'll share our contact information again at the end of our slide deck. So before we let you go, and I know we're winding down with just a few minutes left, we do have a poll and we are just kind of looking for feedback because it's our time of year right now where we're also planning the resources that can help to support you next school year. So momentarily, you are going to see a poll come up. And in fact, it just popped up on my screen, so it's probably popping up on yours. We'd love to know what resources you need to help reach more kids with school breakfast next year. Please select your top one or two choices, the things that you need to get you ready and to roll out your program and reach the most kids. Some of the choices, as you'll see, I'll just read them quickly, are communication materials designed to help school leaders see the value of breakfast, outreach materials to communicate with kids and families about the availability of free breakfast, networking opportunities that No Kid Hungry and Hunger Solutions could host to help you workshop with your peers, workshop different ways that service models could be created and customized for your district, one-on-one technical assistance, and that would be no cost to you through No Kid Hungry and Hunger Solutions, or just similar training sessions like this on school breakfast service, promotion, webinars, lunch and learn sessions, panel discussions. When you get a chance, just click onto your computer and select your top choice. You can select one or two if you'd like. I'll give you about 10 more seconds and I'll let you know we have just one more slide to close out. So we should be closing up in just a minute or two. Cody, would you mind sharing our results? I'm just curious, what are folks thinking right now? Okay, so by far we've got an overwhelming top choice. Communication materials designed to help school leaders see the value of school breakfast. Absolutely hear you on that and think that's something that Francesca and I will take back to our teams to work on. See, there's some other ones that are high need, like some outreach materials, and I can already plug that Francesca and I are already working a little bit more on some social media toolkits along with our colleagues. So we'll take all of these results back and begin to plan for our resource development over the summer in advance of next school year. And to close us out, next slide, please. Just know that we're here to help. Francesca and her team, um, me as well as my team at No Kid Hungry, we're here to help you out. And most of all, we're just so grateful to our wonderful panelists, Lauren and Kyle, for sharing about their incredible breakfast programs. They've inspired me, and I have a feeling there's one or two items, maybe more, that can really resonate with your own individual programs and you might be able to adopt and modify for your own school buildings. If you have any additional questions or need support, don't hesitate to reach out. Our email addresses are provided on the screen. And when you get this follow-up slide deck and resources, Lauren and Kyle have also shared their contact information. For updates on resources and webinars and more, you can consider subscribing to our newsletters. We both have newsletters that go out on about a monthly basis. And once again, you can expect to receive a follow-up email from us soon, which will include a recording of this webinar, a copy of our deck, and more resources to help you strengthen your school breakfast program. Thanks for bearing with us and staying on an extra 2 minutes. That wraps up today's presentation. Again, a huge shout out and thank you and congratulations to all that Lauren and Kyle and their teams and districts have accomplished. We're really excited to watch you do even more and achieve even more next school year. Thank you all for your time and for what you all do for your students and families. Have a great rest of the day, everyone. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.